All right, let's talk about security on AWS. Specifically, we're going to tackle two things that are, the absolute bedrock of keeping your stuff safe in the cloud. IAM and security groups. If you don't get these two right, you're in for a world of hurt. So let's just jump right in and get this figured out. So picture this. You've done all the hard work, right? Your app is coded, it's up and running on AWS, but then that little voice in your head starts asking, okay, so how do I actually protect this thing? How do you keep the bad guys out? It can seem like a huge, complicated problem, but honestly, it all boils down to two fundamental questions. And here they are. First, who? Who gets to touch your stuff? Who can log in? Who can change things? Who can delete things? That's all about identity. And second, what? What kind of data, what kind of traffic from the internet is even allowed to knock on your app's front door? That's your network protection. You need to solve for both. So let's start with that first question, the who. To handle the who, we use AWS Identity and Access Management, or what everyone just calls IAM. Now, let's use an analogy. Think of your entire AWS account as a big, secure office building. IAM is the security guard at the front desk. They're the one checking everybody's ID, making sure they're on the list, and deciding if they're even allowed to step inside. Now, a really important thing to get about IAM is that it's a global service. That means it's not stuck in one single AWS region. It sits above all of them. It's kind of like the central command for all permissions, everywhere in your account. It's how you tell AWS exactly who, and that who could be a person, or it could be another app or service, is allowed to do what. So how does it work? Well, IAM is really made up of four main things. You've got users, which are pretty straightforward. They're just individual people. Then you can bundle those users into groups, like the dev team or the finance team. Then you have roles. Roles are super cool. Think of them as a temporary pass for a specific job. And finally, you have policies. Policies are the brains of the operation. They're the actual documents that spell out the permissions. You can do this, but you can't do that. And if you take away only one single thing about IAM, please make it this: the principle of least privilege. This is the golden rule of cloud security. It just means you only give out the absolute bare minimum permissions someone needs to do their job and nothing more. No giving out the master key when all they need is to get into one room. This one concept will save you so many headaches. Let's make this real. Imagine you have a little bit of code, a Lambda function, and its job is to write some data into a DynamoDB database. Now, you're not going to hard code a password in your code, right? No way. Instead, you create an IAM role. You attach a policy to that role that says, hey, you are allowed to do one thing, the put item action on this specific database table. Then you just attach that role to your Lambda function, and boom. It now has secure, temporary permission to do its job, and only its job. Okay, so that's the who. Our person or our service has their ID badge. They've been cleared by the front desk. They're in the building. But are they allowed to go everywhere? Nope. We still have to control which specific rooms they can enter. And for that, we have security groups. A security group is basically the lock on the server room door. A security group is essentially a virtual firewall that wraps around your resources, like an EC2 server instance. And here's the critical part. It operates at the instance level. It's not a giant wall around your whole network. It's more like a personal bodyguard for each and every resource, deciding what traffic gets in and what gets out. Now, one of the most powerful and helpful features of security groups is that they're stateful. What does that mean? It means they're smart. If you create a rule to allow some traffic in, the security group automatically knows to allow the response to go back out. You don't have to write a second rule. This is a huge deal compared to stateless firewalls, where you have to manually define rules for traffic going in both directions. It makes things so much simpler. So, a classic example. You've got a web server running. You want people to actually see your website, right? So you'd go to its security group and you'd add an inbound rule. That rule would say something like, allow traffic from anywhere on the internet, but only on port 80 and port 443, the standard ports for web traffic. Every other port, slam shut, lock down, protected. Okay, we've got our ID badge system with IAM, and we've got our door locks with security groups. Now, let's put these two side by side. Let's look at the master plan and really see how they're different and, more importantly, how they work together. This really breaks it down. Look at the purpose. IAM is all about who can do things, who has permission to take an action. Security groups are about what traffic can get to a resource. Totally different things. And that affects the scope. IAM is huge. It's global, across your whole account. Security groups are tiny and specific. They live on the instance itself. So the control type for IAM is about identity, while for security groups, it's all about the network. They're two different layers of security.
So let's bring that analogy all the way home. It's this simple. IAM is the ID badge. It proves who you are and what level of clearance you have in the building. The security group is the lock on a specific door. You can have an all-access ID badge, but if you don't have the key for the server room door, you're not getting in. You absolutely need both.
So what's the big takeaway here? You have to think about security in layers. It's never a question of, should I use IAM or a security group? That's the wrong way to think. Real, solid cloud security comes from using them together to build a defense that has depth. And honestly, that's the bottom line. Getting a handle on IAM to control who can do what, and using security groups to control what traffic gets where, that isn't just a good idea. It is the absolute non-negotiable foundation of your entire security strategy in the cloud. It's step one. It's how you start building your digital fortress. So I'll just leave you with this thought. We've established that IAM is your ID card, and security groups are the locks on the doors. That's a fantastic start. But what else does a real fortress need? What about the guards walking the perimeter? What about the security cameras monitoring the hallways? Think about those other layers as you continue on your cloud journey.